Hello and welcome to this week's preview show. Games are coming thick and fast, so with that in mind, we thought we'd use this opportunity to shine a light on the fantastic work that goes on behind the scenes at the football club. And to help us do that, I'm delighted to be joined today by our head of physical performance, changing job title there for Callum Walsh, and of course Stephen Chicken from the Examiner. How are you both? You okay?
Good, yeah, thank you. Very well. Cheers, Adam.
Fantastic. Cal, obviously, we'll start with you. Just talk us through your role and how that's adapted under Carlos Corberán.
So my role is to try and look after the physical performance of the playing staff and the playing squad. So we've had a bit of a change with the style of play, so that brings about its own demands, and changing from previous regimes, there's can be a change in training load, a change in style, a change in what's required in the game. So we've got to manage that quite carefully, and then try to optimize the performance for the players within the games, because we know what's coming and what's required of them. So to get them to that level, we then have to build them from where they've been to hopefully get them to the right level to be able to perform week in and week out.
You mentioned there the change in style of play. Obviously, everyone's noticed that it's full on, loads of pressing, loads of recovery runs.
Oh, sorry.
for you, how does that change, and how did that change in pre-season? Obviously, it was a shorter pre-season, more compressed, but equally you have to look after the bodies more, don't you?
Yeah, it was a really strange pre-season, probably not just for us, but for everyone involved, just because it was shortened. We had less time on the training ground. With the new manager, with the new style, there was a lot of factors kind of thrown in that we were dealing with. So we have to look at what's required and build them into it. So we've kind of been thinking about this period coming up since day one of pre-season, and how can we prepare their bodies for effectively playing 2 games a week. Because when we look at it, I think about a third of the season is Saturday, Tuesday this year, which is a far bigger proportion than normal. So our lads have to be able to not just do it once, but 3 times a week effectively. So we need to kind of gradually build them into that, but we probably had to be more aggressive than what we'd normally be, because we effectively had sort of 2.5, 3 week pre-season, compared to 6 weeks. We had a lot less games as well. Games is a real big factor, not just tactically, but also physically as well. So sometimes you can train as hard as you want, but it's that game exposure. So I would normally say for most teams, pre-season is just preparing you for the first game effectively, to survive it and be able to deal with the demands of it. And it's the first sort of 4 to 5 games that actually get you match fit. And that's not just us, that's most of the league. So when we've had less than 5 games, we had, I think, 2 or 3 games. Yeah. By the time you're getting into the first couple of games, it's still effectively physically pre-season for us, and then you add on to a very demanding style. It probably did play a part in the last periods of games. So when you have this transition of style, whether it, if it happens in season, these styles take 5-6 games to get used to playing. And it's almost like you're good for 60 minutes, then the next game you're good for 70 minutes, and then the next week you're good for 80. And you're hoping in those first couple of games it might be 1 or 2 up, and then you can kind of hang on, because the demands are so great. So the lads are almost kind of dead on their feet effectively, and you're kind of hanging on. So you're hoping that you've played so well that you can get 1 or 2-0 up and hang on the last 10-15. But now we're hopefully into that sort of sixth game, and we're starting to find our feet with what the expectations are of Carlos, and he's very demanding of them physically. He knows exactly what he wants from them out of each game, and there's no grey areas. So the lads know what's required. So the lads kind of are straight on to me as soon as the game's finished. You know, what are my stats? What we have certain metrics that we look at. So they are literally just peppering me, even on sort of Tuesday night, 10:30, 11 o'clock after home games. Lads would text me, right, what were my stats? You know, because they know if they don't hit certain numbers that they are under pressure.
That's good to hear, though, isn't it, Steve? I was going to say, like, obviously, the lads really focused and conscious about the amount of running they're doing, the amount of kilometres that they've run in a game.
Yeah, and I think as you allude to, you kind of have to be, and it's interesting seeing the work that's being done at the games as well. We were commenting, Dave Hattrick and I were noticed at halftime that rather than sort of sending the lads out just to kick a ball around, even at halftime before you make a substitution, as we've seen before, or as we saw other clubs doing, there was a real focused and determined effort to sort of get them doing drills rather than just sort of get your legs warm. And it seems like I mean, you'll obviously know better than me, Cal, but it seems like there's more of a move towards doing things that will prepare you for real life match day situations. Murder ball being another one that a lot of players have talked about, and that Carlos has talked about, saying it's a really important part of the week to get the players used to that Saturday, Tuesday, Saturday schedule.
Yeah, I mean, the famed murder ball is something that we've kind of used effectively to prepare us for these weeks. So we started looking into what the sort of peak demands were of games last year for sort of 5 to 8 minute blocks. We sat down with the players and said, listen, this is the hardest you work in a game. Gave them some numbers. And then Carlos wanted them to work harder than that in murder ball. So there was kind of no getting away from it. That's your hardest part in a game. This is where murder ball is. This is how long it's going to be, and I expect you to be above that, because then when you get to the game's effectively going to be easier, because in murder ball, effectively, you're looking at the worst case scenario 4 or 5 times for 5 to 8 minutes. So when you actually get into the game, you speak to the likes of Harry Toffolo and Lewis, the game almost kind of feels a little bit easier because there's so much intensity every Wednesday. And equally, they're starting to kind of feel like they're annoying opposition, because they're kind of like, oh, I'll follow you for the whole game, and I'm not going to get tired in the 80th minute, because I'll still be here next year. So whether you like it or not, you're going to have to put up with me. So we've been really aggressive in murder ball for a period of 8 to 9 weeks. So that, on top of dealing with a short preseason, probably not hindered us, but was hard for us at the start. But we knew it was long-term beneficial for our lads, because we've got 7 games in 20 whatever days, then we got 10 days off, and then we got another 9 games that were Saturday, Tuesday, Saturday. So we knew that we'd have to take some risks earlier when it was Saturday, in order to prepare them for this. We probably could have taken a much easier stance and maybe not risk players or not push players so hard in the Saturday weeks, but there was a conscious effort from day one that the season could be made or broken by January the 1st, just in these 2 blocks and what we can physically deal with.
It's really interesting, and the running stats. Just want to take you back onto that just for a couple of moments. I've been told, obviously being around the training ground, using Harry Toffolo as an example here, that he had a target of how far he had to run in a game. I think it was Rotherham. He had to match Andrew Robertson. Those kind of little targets do a lot for a player's mindsets, don't they?
Yeah, and I think quite often a lot of the players are compared. So if you're playing in a B team game, or if you played, say, on Saturday but then not on Tuesday, and the guy that's come into your position has physically outperformed you, that is data that's going to get back. And well, the physicality of our game style and plan is so important. It's not necessarily important for every manager and every style of play. Being physically outstanding doesn't always win you games. It's part of what I would call like a system-based model. So if you look at, let's say, Liverpool or Burnley, those sorts of teams are based on the system and the team. It's not just having the best players turning up and hopefully winning the game. And the team is greater than any individual. So what you'll find is if one player isn't physically able to do it, the whole thing breaks down. So they're relying on each other so that they know that when I step in, that's going to be physically required of me, just to kind of get to zero. And then the football then starts to take the presidents per se, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You can see that, Steve, can't you, on the pitch, where if someone hasn't done their job or hasn't tracked back, then the whole system kind of falls to pieces there, doesn't it?
Yeah, because it's that much more man-to-man style in defence. So, you mentioned Harry Toffolo going in and tracking his man across to the opposite wing, which we've seen a couple of times this season already. And, if you've got players that aren't doing that, then everyone else gets dragged out of position, which is, we saw it the start of last year at right back, that if one player is out of position, everyone else gets dragged, and then suddenly you're exposed. And when you're a man-to-man system, I think that's probably doubly true. So it's difficult, and you've I suppose as well, with that man-to-man system, that you're going to have to do at least as much running as the opposition are going to do, and you need to be able to match anyone on your day.
Cal, where in periods like this, where there's a game every 2 or 3 days, how does that affect the planning? Like you said, you've done a lot of preparation work for this, but how does it affect the planning and what you can do in those days between the games?
It's a nightmare. We've got there's so many moving pieces to try and sort out. There's probably not one right way, and if I say we had the right way, it would come across wrong. But you just make what we would call like performance decisions as a team and then as individuals. So we've got the travel down Swansea, you're getting back late, then you're in Sunday for a recovery. When do we train on Monday afternoon? We need to think about how the body's recovering. Are they going to go on the grass? Are they not going to go on the grass? Do they need a stimulus? Do they not need a stimulus? How much did they play in the last game? How much did they play in the last 5 games? What have their training numbers been like? What's their injury history like? So what's their age as well? What's their data like? What's their subjectives like when we speak to them every morning? Are they kind of in pieces? Are they feeling good? So you've probably got maybe, with every play, you've probably got maybe 8 or 9 decisions or 8 or 9 factors to bring about to make a decision for one player, and then you've got 25 players. So it's kind of, I would like to think it's the kind of Goldilocks thing where it's not too much, not too little, but you've got to get each player just right. And what's good for one is not necessarily good for another. And you've got to take into account all those things. How much have they played in the last 2 games? Are they going to be starting in the next game? Are they not going to be starting? All these factors. So that's where you have to work obviously closely with the manager and try and get his thoughts on sort of 3 or 4 games down the line, because then that allows you to plan, and then that allows you to make certain decisions. Again, we've been quite aggressive in terms of trying to get the lads on the grass as much as possible every day, even if it's something small. So even if it's something that we can go out and work on that's going to help us for the game, we've tried to come away from the passive approach to a slightly more aggressive approach in terms of trying to get them on the grass every day and get them used to working every day. And that's been the decision that, again, has been made since day one. So we knew that by the time that we got there, if we asked them to get on the grass the day after the game, they're kind of used to it, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
I'm curious to know, how much does that kind of schedule increase the risk of injury, and how much how much weight does that sort of take in these kinds of decisions and in this approach?
The schedule ever will take the game schedule will always take the biggest hit for injuries, just because it is the biggest physical stimulus. So it's not just the physical stimulus, you've also got the contacts. So lads will kind of get battered and bruised from that. So instead of Saturday, it might be something that, for example, you might have a player that picks up a little bit of a knock and go, well, if it was Saturday, I'll be back fit for next Saturday. But if it's 2 days later, they go, I can get through, let's say, Tuesday, but then by the time they've almost gone again on Tuesday, then it kind of spikes their pain. That makes sense. So it's harder to get consecutive games together. So it takes a huge demand on the players, physically, mentally. I think obviously the other part that's really difficult for them is not having the crowd in as well. Because physically, when you're tired, and you do get, I mean, I feel it from the bench. I'm sure the lads kind of feel it on the pitch that when you're kind of tired, or if there's a big tackle made with sort of 5-10 to go, and you get a full rush from the crowd, it does kind of give you a second wind. So I think that over this period, we're going to find really difficult, not just us, every team that's going to be involved in the last 10-15 minutes of games are going to be really, really tricky, just because there's not that vibe from the crowd to really help them kick on again.
How do you manage that? I saw obviously at Swansea, I think it was 2 or 3 minutes to go at the end, and Carlos turned around to the rest of the bench and told everyone to stand up and get the team going during that period. So is that, how do you manage the players not becoming kind of mentally tired and giving them that extra boost with 5-10 minutes to go?
Well, I mean, there's a couple of facts in that. So first of all, the fact that we put them probably in some dark places in pre-season, and where we've been quite aggressive with them in putting them through certain things in murderball that are probably going to put them into mentally bad states where they're physically drained and have to go again, and then the demands are just as high on them. Because if you've met the manager, there's no sort of 99% from him. It's 100% or nothing. So the lads know that. They know they can't get away with anything. So that's one part in terms of almost exposing them to that. There's a physical aspect where we hope we've conditioned them well enough so that they actually feel fresher coming into last game. There's a big emphasis on nutrition this year as well. So helping them, fueling them so they have the right energy, giving them gels, giving them certain drinks at certain times that are going to help their energy. But then also, like you say, a big emphasis coming from the staff. I think Karel Eiting actually said to me the other day, he said, you know, when I came off the other day, he said, I couldn't believe the difference in the two benches. And I think, I mean, I don't know, I'm not a player, but if I'm really tired and then someone's screaming at me, whether it be Carlos, Jorge, Narciso, or whoever, you're going to go, oh, all right, and you're not going to be able to switch off. And I think the managers kind of clicked on the fact that no crowd being in there, that maybe it's only 0.5%, and I'm not saying we take any credit for this at all, but I think if you have got people geeing you on when the fans aren't in, maybe it helps. I don't know. I mean, it's not going to hurt, is it? So
absolutely not.
And we've seen the players doing it as well. That, you know, there was Harry Toffolo at Josh Koroma and at Swansea. You know, try keep going. You could see Josh was absolutely exhausted, and Toss was screaming at him, just like getting him in position. So I suppose that's where your senior players and your leader type characters come to the fore as well.
I think I noticed a big difference in sort of like Rotherham and even Swansea. I don't know if you kind of heard it, was the support from the lads, not just the staff, the support on the lads on the bench in terms of, I think Back has been really vocal in supporting the lads, and, you know, the lads really kind of geeing on the lads and not letting things drop. You know, there's a kind of relentless attitude that's kind of being instilled, and the levels that are required are so high. I think because the game's so physically demanding, they're kind of like, well, if I've worked as hard as I've worked for 85 minutes, I'm not going to throw it away in the last couple of minutes. So I'm going to be on kind of everyone because I've worked too hard to not come away with the result. So, you know, if you're 1-0 up with 5 to go, you kind of work that bit harder to keep it.
Well, I think Rotherham was the first time Town had scored an injury time equaliser since 2016.
Wow, okay.
So yeah, and that tells you something. And you know, there are a lot of late goals conceded sort of this time last year as well. That was a big problem at the start of last season, and you know, people talked about the fitness side of thing, but I think the mental side that we've just touched on as well is so important, because there were so many games last year where you reached a certain point, or especially if they were behind, where it was like, oh, they're not going to get back into this. And
yeah,
this,
I mean, for me, that part at the end of the start of last season, there's obviously the fitness part. Well, there's nothing to get away from that, but there's also the part that psychologically that the human beings are quite complex animals. And when you actually look at it, is when you've won, what was it, one game in 30 something, that what happens is what ends up happening from psychological point of view is that if you're right back and you're at 1-1 with 10 minutes to go, you're not going to make a committed run as an overlap, because you think, if this breaks down and they score, it's my fault. So it's what tends to happen is players go into survival mode. Not just us. If you look at any team that's near a bottom, every manager comes in, new manager comes in, says they're not fit enough. But if you play 15 to 20 Championship or Premier League games, you're pretty fit. There's that psychological aspect of, I'm not going to make that run because he's either not going to pass it to me and I'm going to have to run all the way back, or if I make a mistake and it breaks down and they score, it's going to be my fault. Whereas when confidence is flowing, you're kind of like, yeah, I'll just crack on. And when you start to bomb forward, it then actually has the opposite effect on the opposition. They start going back. So there's lots of factors to it. And it's an interesting one, but that's why we kind of love this game. There's so many different factors to winning and losing.
It's really, really interesting. And Cal, I wanted to just discuss your career a little bit. Obviously, you worked in England, went away for a little bit, and now you've come back. Just talk us through your experiences of being a physical coach, a fitness coach around the world.
Yeah, so I'm probably going to get absolutely peppered from all the staff by bringing this up, but I'm glad you brought it up because I haven't. Yeah, traveled a little bit. So I did a season in Brazil, so 12 months there. Then I worked with the Turkish national team in Euro 2016, and then I was out at Aspire Academy, which is sort of elite academy over there. So you kind of take things from every different culture. There's good and bad bits of everything. Brazil was really interesting. It was relentless in terms of I think we had 81 games in a 12-month period. So this period now is probably, I think those sorts of experiences where in Brazil we had a 2-week pre-season and then it was game for 10 months. Kind of felt a bit like what we did in lockdown or what we've got coming up this season. So I think sometimes you look back on those experiences and go, oh, actually, hopefully they've helped me a little bit in terms of being able to make decisions. And I think where sometimes football can take quite passive decisions to rest and recover. I think what Brazil taught me was just how incredibly robust players can be if we do it right. And I think that's where we kind of made decisions based right from day one pre-season, knowing that this was coming. So yeah, it's been a little bit crazy, a little bit mental. I've worked with lots of different nationalities in terms of head coaches, and they've all got. I think looking back in my career, I think I've had one English head coach,
wow,
and 2 British out of a fair few. So working with managers from different cultures is an experience of mine. So you see different things, different styles of play, and you also see the demandings of what's required. So every manager demands different things. I think the interesting thing with Carlos is obviously he's had quite a fitness coach background back in the day. So he's very, very clued into his sessions and what his sessions have as a physical output. So his understanding of his sessions is probably from a physical point of view is the best I've seen, because he knows if he does this session, it will give us this. So when he's planning them, he from a physical point of view, he's not just kind of putting technical and tactical sessions together. He's putting the week together, and he knows what he wants by the end of the week. And it's our job to kind of help guide him towards that. But he's got a really, really good understanding of his stuff.
It's super, super interesting. And obviously this weekend we face Preston North End. Steve, they've got the best away form in the Championship. Not quite done as well at home, but away from home, they're a really formidable force, aren't they?
Yeah, I mean they've scored at least 2 goals in all of their away games this season. They put 4 past Brentford, 2 past Norwich, and 2 past QPR as well. So um, I would say that they're probably quite well set up to play as the away team as well. Funnily enough, just from the games that we had against them last season, they're a very physical side in terms of, that they're a team that will look to bully you and look to sort of be annoying, basically, and all over the pitch. And your tactical fouls and your physical challenges and your 50-50 balls, they don't sort of leave anything on the pitch. And it's that is the kind of challenge that Town struggled with a lot last year. We had it against Preston, we had it against Stoke, and I think this sort of early part of the season, we've constantly looked back to last season and said, okay, but this last year they struggled with this. They need to show that they can overcome that. And I think that the Preston game, that is going to be sort of the main thing that we're looking for, to see how they can cope with a very muscular side.
Cal, when you face against the likes of Preston and other physical sides, how much bearing does that take in your minds in terms of the preparation for that match?
From a physical point of view, not a huge amount, to be fair. From a tactical point of view, that will always change. That's nothing to do with me, thankfully. Too much stress and pressure with that one. But from a physical point of view, when you have a systems-based model, like I kind of went back, is our game plan will be physically the same kind of thing. The tactical side will obviously change game to game, but the physical requirements will be the same. We'll have our goals throughout the year from a physical point of view in terms of developing players a certain way. So we'll look to increase muscle mass and those sorts of things, and strength across the year. It's not something we can do just for a single game. So it doesn't really change us a huge amount. However, in different regimes, it might do. And it, for example, depending on whether it's a high press, a low block, all these different things have certain physical requirements. So we'll then have to prep the week accordingly if it's different managers. But with Carlos, it's every game physically is absolute maximum effort, and nothing else will be accepted.
I think that with that in mind, Steve, it will make this game a really interesting one, won't it? Obviously, like we said, Preston are a very physical side. They like to press teams as well who are playing out from the back. It should be a really interesting physical contest.
Yeah, and a bit of a clash of styles, as you say, as well. So, yeah, it'll be. I think having sort of Navi Sarr in there probably is a big help, to be honest. And I think you'll be looking to your Jonathan Hoggs as well to put in a big shift and a big effort, and help with that side of things. But it's physically, as we've said, you've got all kinds of different parts of the game, and everything sort of adds up into a result. And the physical side is a big chunk of it. I think it's, people have done sort of analysis of what is a successful team and what is the biggest thing. And I think sort of at this level in particular, the physical side is one of the biggest, if not the biggest single factor. Because obviously, you could have, if you got a team of Jan Molbys, you're probably not going to win 2 games in the Championship. So, but there is the other side as well. There's tactics, there's technique, there's determination, there's all of these things, and I think we've seen bits of all of those things across all of the different games, and everything's sort of on an upward curve. So it'll be an interesting challenge.
I think that's why, for me, I think the Championship is probably one of the most interesting leagues in the world, just because it's so. I'm not sure there's any other league that has such a variation in style in terms of from week to week, and then variation in quality in terms of clubs that have huge budgets, clubs that don't have budgets, that have just been promoted or whatever it is. So it's really interesting. Sometimes, a couple of years ago, you've got like your likes of Aston Villa, who are just an absolutely historic Premier League club coming down. Then you've got teams that promote from League One, and then you've got a certain level of quality of players, and then you've got your different styles. So for me, as a kind of football fan, first and foremost, is sorry about that. It's a better look for me in the dark. It's for me the league I enjoy kind of watching most, or if I'm kind of sat on the sofa like seeing the scores come in, because you really can't kind of predict it. Whereas Premier League or a lot of other divisions, if you can start to play your soccer six or whatever it is, not that I do obviously, but you can have a fair idea. Where it's in the Championship, you just got it doesn't make any sense, which is I think why we love it.
Yeah, I think you've put that perfectly, Cal. The beauty of the Championship is that anything can happen pretty much on any given week, and that's why the challenge is so great. Fingers crossed we'll be able to extend our good run of form this weekend against Preston. Cal, Steve, thank you very much for joining us. Huddersfield Town fans, if you're watching this, season card holders can obviously watch the game on iFollow HDFC. If you're not a season card holder, then you can purchase a match pass for £10. Thank you, everyone, for watching.